Welcome, Reanimated fans, to this week's episode, Reanimated. That is. I'm AJ Conrad, here as always with my intrepider co-host, Stuart Tiffin. Hey, Tiffin.
Hey, Tiffin. Hey, Conrad. Not just intrepid, but intrepider.
Intrepider. Then
I'm feeling the energy today. It's good. It's feeling good.
Yeah. I don't know if it's energy. I've not been sleeping really well. So I've been drinking some iced coffee this morning. I may have over caffeinated a little. So just fair warning. But today I am actually pretty excited to talk about the first episode of Resident Evil, the series, which debuted on Netflix this past week.
2 short days ago, it debuted on Netflix. And I'm glad that you're excited to talk about it, because I am too.
Yeah. And as everybody knows who listens to this podcast, I am generally a little bit more skeptical of the Resident Evil franchise, and it's not my favorite. I like some things about it, but I just feel like the franchise really just has been very thin and running on fumes for a very long time.
I mean, it's like is probably the longest continuously running film franchise. Yeah. They had 8 films under Mila Jovovich.
Yeah.
And they've had animated shows, which we have never really watched much of that one. I think we started to and laughed too much. We watched Welcome to Raccoon City just a month or two ago. It feels like it might have been longer.
Mm-hmm.
So where does your skepticism come from? The Mila Jovovich movies?
No, I mean, those movies, there's some good things that I love about it. And look, you're going to make, and this is, I think, probably a thing for any movie that's based upon a video game. And there's lots of fun things about that, which I do love, which is that it does actually feel kind of like you're in a video game, and they do have a lot of Easter eggs for any people who are a fan of those games. And I do happen to be a fan of those games. I think that they are a lot of fun. But I think if you're making a 20 plus movie franchise of it, there's just only so much you can do. And I do think that you have to in some ways reinvent that or figure out different ways to present it. And I just feel like they have just run out of runway, honestly, for that. But in this case, and that's why I was skeptical about the series. However, I think that this series, at least we have only watched the first episode. So with that said, they did release everything, so you could binge watch this. And I would say that it is very bingey. It lends itself to that because it definitely has a cliffhanger feel to it. To me, this is a really fun sort of not taking itself too seriously popcorn action horror thing. And it's fun. The writing's good. The actors are great. They definitely had a pretty decent budget for this.
Yeah.
It's, and it's not taking itself too seriously, but it also is I don't know. There are definitely moments where you're it's sort of like a classic horror jump scare thing. And I don't know, the tenor of it feels better. The cast is fantastic. So I really am enjoying at least the first episode, and I hope that it continues. I have not looked at reviews of this because I didn't want to. I mean, we know some of the story, and I think they're even hinting at that, or they're setting the table for that in this. So there's certainly familiar names and familiar things and we've got our big bad, the umbrella, and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't want to spoil myself by reading too many of the reviews because I think that they go pretty far into things, and I don't yet want to get spoiled by it.
Well, I can tell you, AJ, that remember Paul Tassi?
Yeah.
We first got to know his writing when he was writing these extraordinarily glowing reviews of Fear the Walking Dead in season 1 and 2. He was just oh, it's now better than the Prime show, blah, blah, blah. And I think he's changed his mind on that. But so he wrote a review of this that was basically this is terrible. This show is terrible. And all the reviews I'm seeing are that it's bad. And I don't understand that because what I saw in this first episode was good writing, was a good cast, and an interesting enough story told in 2 different timelines. Lance Reddick,
I was about to say he is okay, so I'll admit I adore him. he is one of my all-time favorites. He was amazing in The Wire. He was amazing in Fringe.
Wash.
Like he
Plays a
is
lot
just,
of police captains.
he does he's definitely got that kind of like commanding presence, but you could also see him playing evil scientist, and he does this very well in this. Or
Evil.
not evil, but like maybe misguided scientist,
Yeah.
maybe conflicted scientist. Anyway, he just has like an incredibly I adore him, and he is great in this.
His
um
reactions to Jade, his daughter, who is a really difficult teenage girl, but also she has some of the best one-liners in this
yeah,
episode. His reactions to her, like acting out, are great. It's like subdued. He's just like confused a lot by her behavior.
yeah, and
It's fun.
she's Ella Balinska, who plays Jade. And
Well, that's
she the
the
later
young
time period,
version.
the later, wait, is she the later
Ella
one?
Balinska is the older version of
Okay.
Jade. The younger one is Tamara something.
Okay. Well, both Jades are great. Sorry, Tamara Smart is young Jade, and they're both amazing.
She is,
Um,
yeah, like the honest, yeah, I
but
agree. They're both really good, but Tamara, I think, stands out to me maybe because of the dialogue she's given. And
yeah, and I mean, we have a little bit more of her. Like, I would say, Ella Balinska is great, but we're seeing more of her in the action-y type
yeah,
things. So we haven't seen a ton of her as much, but Tamara is fantastic. And so she's supposed to be, I think, 14 or 15. I think that's around the age
high
that
school age. I don't know. Yeah.
and so she is like a twin to her like sister, Billy, and I don't know who Billy is played by, but Sienna Agudon, and they're both really, really good. And they both play just this teenage role. And that's my comment about the writing, is that they're both believable, and they're both believable in sort of playing these different sort of emotions and things going on. So like the young Jade is pissed that they're moved to Raccoon City. Her sister isn't happy about it, but she's kind of like playing along. But like Jade is really doing the acting out, and there's a lot of like little like half little like, I don't know, nasty comments under her breath, like
So many.
very teenagery, but done like really well and believable. And there's that like kind of like, I don't know, annoying thing that the dad's just like, oh God, the rolling of the eyes, because he's just like, oh, teenagers, like they do the family dynamic really well, and you're not seeing like you do see them interacting, but they make the most of every single scene where this is, and they build these characters and their relationships really well. So I believe it. I believe that these two are sisters. I believe that this dad is like this incredibly skilled person, though we don't know too much of what he does yet. We know he's like a scientist or something with, and has been brought to work at Umbrella. There's definitely something nefarious going on, but because there's like blood samples with the girls and things like that.
That he's injecting himself with, which was an
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah. So I don't
revelation.
know. I don't know what that's about, but and then there's also like just sort of and it's not, and the reason why I like it, it's not just sort of like putting this out there, not like they have a conversation, like it's not like they're hiding things in a way that doesn't make sense, but like Billy has had problems at her old school, and they talk about it, and about the fact that she basically lost her temper and hurt somebody, and now everybody thought she was psycho, and that may be part of why they're moving, and she doesn't want people. So part of her reticence and her passivity is because she doesn't want to start anything. And in fact, that makes it, she's a very sympathetic character, but I don't think we've seen her snap yet, and
Yeah,
I kind of want to see her snap a little bit,
that
but
does feel like it's going to be pretty telegraphed. And obviously, by the end of this episode, she is
yeah.
somewhat introduced, not on screen, but it's like, oh, maybe she's the big bad. I think there is another big bad in the show that we haven't met yet, but we haven't seen the older version of her. We weren't even sure if she survived until the
Alive,
very end of the
yeah.
episode.
Yeah, so that, and I mean, there's a really good reaction from the older Jade when she hears that, say her sister's been looking for her, which is a little, you know And I mean, knowing what we know about Resident Evil, you know that something's going on, and at like everything that we've witnessed just about Raccoon Corporation. And that's one thing that I really like, is that you don't necessarily have to have any of this knowledge to watch this and enjoy it.
Well,
Like you,
in fact, it's better if you don't. And I think
yeah.
maybe some of like Paul Tassi was speculating that some of the negativity on places like Rotten Tomatoes, where it has an audience score of 22%, which I 100% think is unwarranted.
Oh
He
yeah,
thinks that this is
definitely.
due to the fact that it's an original story using character names who have some level of familiarity to fans. Also, they're not white people, which is like the entire cast of the original films, more or less. And the video games, there's a lot of white people, and this Wesker family is not white.
I
And
kind of like that though. I
I
think
mean,
that
of
that's the
course,
cool. I
who
think it's
cares?
great. It doesn't even matter.
And Albert Wesker, I don't think he was a scientist. Like he certainly wasn't in the movie that we just watched,
No.
where he was played by, oh God, Billy Bowlegs, the guy from
Yeah.
Black Sails. Um, and he was a soldier
Right.
who was like turned into a weapon. And I remember the Albert Wesker vaguely from the Mila Jovovich films, and he was like an operator, not a scientist, but he was high up at Umbrella. So I don't know where in the lore this Albert Wesker might fall. Maybe it's a completely different kind of character, but I don't
Yeah.
really give a damn. The story was never that good to begin with.
No, they can
Uh,
do whatever they want. I mean, that's
yeah.
the thing. Like they could do whatever they want with it, and I think they have. And I think that, that's probably like totally fine. And I think that honestly, this whole franchise doesn't take itself too seriously, so you can do whatever you want. He could go from being like a police captain to a scientist to whatever you want. And I don't think it matters that much. I mean, that's to me, that's sort of like one of the things about this whole franchise is that you can like sort of morph things into different stories with no issue because it isn't that serious. And I will say one thing about his character in general, in terms of the franchise and whatever, is that he's always sort of doing something behind the scenes, and like, I don't know, doing things that are nefarious. So to me, it makes sense that they might morph him into a scientist, and I think that that's probably fine. um and again, I think you just, honestly, I think people just have to go into this with like open hearts, open minds, and just enjoy it. It's a fun summer ride, in my
So I
opinion.
mean, yeah, our one episode in has been certainly that, and a lot of that again is buoyed by one-liners that young Jade gets to utter. Like when they arrive at their new home, and she says, "We're in South Africa, and there's like 5 black people. This place
I
is
know.
effing weird." She says things to her. I don't know who this woman is who's like trying to cut them cake. I don't think she lives there. Maybe she does. She says like, "Oh,
I,
this place was voted like best place to live," and she goes, "By who?" And then she throws a bunch of shade at Lululemon and Elon Musk, even,
oh yeah, yeah, it was great.
and CrossFit. They
Oh,
just give her great lines, like, "I'm going to be great at heroin. I mostly read Zootopia porn." Like I was just smiling most of the time that she was on screen, and then it takes a turn halfway through the episode where she starts to give Billy some pretty bad advice, like prison advice,
yeah.
because Billy's having these troubles with this one kid and that kid I think is hard to understand because she seems like an outcast, but then she
Right.
also
And
is a bully. And I don't know if that behavior is real.
well, so that was the one thing that I didn't fully get because it felt out of line, or the reaction seemed out of line. And it made me wonder if there was something like whatever he's injecting or whatever he's taking from the girls, is there something going on with them that's causing people to be violent near them? And maybe
Hmm.
that's why she had some school problems. I don't know. Maybe that could be totally wrong, but because the reaction seemed so outsized, it did feel a little out of place. And so maybe they're trying to go a little too hard at the bullied being then turning into like a bully. But it didn't feel, that whole reaction between those two didn't feel like it made sense to me. So I don't know. We'll maybe have to see further down the line whether something else happens. But yes, um, Jade is giving Billy extraordinarily stupid advice and also saying things like everybody's laughing at you.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody, I think they kind of thought that the other kid was being a jerk. So I don't think anybody was laughing at her. I think that was like just weird teenagery stuff. So I don't know. That one part didn't necessarily ring true to me, but that's why I thought maybe that something else is happening there.
Yeah, I think there is some other context that's obviously going to come into focus here. But that the South Asian young woman who is like also being told that she can't sit with people in the lunchroom, for her to then go full aggro and be like, "Oh, you're a vegan? I love shooting deer in the head, and I think it's awesome." And you're stupid.
It was weird.
Yeah, like she just goes out the gates full bore, and I don't know that I've ever seen people act that way, but maybe.
Well, that's why I thought maybe there was something else happening, but we'll have to wait and see on that point. However, we do get to see, and I think to me it's pretty clear, but I don't know why somebody would set up Billy in this way, or if Billy doesn't remember doing this, or if it was Jade doing this and getting Billy in trouble. I don't know. But basically, after the second incident where she gets like food mashed in her face, Billy, we then see like a scene where this strange mascotty thing beats the crap out of the bully girl, and the like head is found in Billy's locker. And I guess the only part of this whole sort of storyline that confuses me is that if it actually was Jade doing this, why would she like set up her sister that way? I don't know. The whole thing felt weird, right?
Yeah.
However, it leads to one of like a very good scene with Lance Reddick, which is he like comes in because Billy gets called into the principal's office, and this is an incredibly good scene where
it starts off. I didn't enjoy the way it started, where it was two adults and the bully in the room with, well, maybe they're thinking that she's actually the aggressor in this scene, but it's super inappropriate for this to be going the way it's going. And when Lance Reddick does come into the scene, you're like, oh, thank goodness. But yeah, then he does handle it so nicely, and I feel like it's his turn to like throw his weight around, but he does it in a way that's still kind of passive. And I thought that was an interesting approach by the writers.
Well, what I love about this scene is that, and so basically he gets called in because Billy has gotten called to the principal's office, and you've got the father of the bully basically ahead of this, really saying some pretty like terrible things, saying he's going to press charges, very threatening. And you're right, totally inappropriate, especially, these are kids. So this isn't like, and I don't fully believe that this is how this would have been handled necessarily. Usually they would have separated them out, everybody out, and then, talk to people separately, but then you wouldn't have such a cool scene. So Lance Reddick comes in sort of when this is starting, when the father of the girl is starting to get really worked up, and everything just kind of like gets taken down a notch because he's very calm in how he manages this, and also calm but very steely. And the other thing that this scene really reveals is how important he is at Umbrella, that his role is basically at the top of the food chain. And he starts out like kind of friendly, but like very not even all that subtly threatening the father. And ultimately he does not believe his daughter has done this, and he also believes she's being treated unfairly.
And he knows, like, and it was nice that he was aware that this other girl had already been, assaulting, in quotes. Well, the first time definitely was assault. The second time, I guess it's basically, Rudy Giuliani versions of assault. Where she gets the burrito, actually it's smashed in her face, right? So that's assault. And he's like, you assaulted my daughter twice, and you were just threatening my daughter outside, because he's like, thin walls. If I'd heard another adult speaking to one of my children that way, I would have gone in there half cocked. I would have like, oh yeah. And so, the way that he approaches this, the way they have him approach it, I think is like I said, it's an interesting tack. And then he doesn't say like, I can have you fired. It's more complicated. I mean, it's essentially what he's saying, but he comes around it like from an interesting direction. So I did think that was pretty fun. And then the guy playing Mr. Isaacs, Dave, also does a good job of responding and reacting to that. And even the principal looks very uncomfortable because, obviously Wesker has the power to do this to just about anybody at Umbrella, and she's an Umbrella employee too.
Right. Um,
Yeah, as soon as he walked in too, and Dave says under his breath, "Oh, Wesker, damn it!"
yep.
Like he knew what was about to happen,
Yeah, but I mean, he should have known just given Billy's
right?
last name, so that was dumb.
Yeah, if he didn't know her name going into this, he probably should have thought about it more, especially in a company town. Um,
Right. But again, I mean, I love this scene and I like this just is another example of the writing and the acting level in this series and even the looks between the principal and the other father when Wesker like comes in and starts like basically saying, "Oh, this is how it's going to be."
yeah,
And he's doing it in a very like indirect way, but a very threatening way and a very serious way. And the other thing I love is that the daughter, the bully, doesn't get it. And so she's getting like upset, and the dad's like, "No, no, be quiet. Oh,
mm-hmm.
okay, everything's all good." And the dynamic of the scene, it's like very quick moving. There's a lot of good energy in it. There's so many different feelings going on. And then ultimately Wesker comes in, just throws his weight around and then gets his daughter out and is like, "Okay, we're gonna just like take care of this."
We're gonna have
And
a mental health day too, and they use
right,
that to push the story forward
yeah,
because her mental health day leads to her
right.
revelation about the
So
bunnies.
it's really good and it's just a great to me it was just really well done and this is one of my favorite scenes in this whole episode.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is to me this just sort of shows the quality of the show. And again, I was very skeptical going into this, as you know, and so I was just so pleasantly surprised. I just think it's fun. It's a fun watch, and it makes sense. Like it doesn't feel forced. So she does have her mental health day, goes and sees the different things in the lab. Like all of it is. I just thought it was really designed well, and the storytelling was designed well. And even we see because we're doing like sort of flashbacks between present day, which is 2036 and back to the sort of origins of all of this. And for those who know the series and the franchise, or sorry, the franchise of the movies, um, none of this is totally like all of this kind of makes sense. We already see that this virus has gotten out of control. The world is in trouble. We see that it's very much a 28 days later kind of wasteland in London, or that was what it seemed reminiscent of to me. um but we're also like Jade's older character is like running around London doing some I think research.
Yeah,
And we see that there must be pockets of civilization elsewhere. She's got a family somewhere else. Like I feel like they do a good job of juxtaposing the sort of origin Raccoon City, like Jade and Billy as teenagers, with the present day, although we haven't yet seen Billy, as you said.
yeah,
So I just thought that the contrast between the two worlds is really well done. I think the cinematography is great. And they've done such a good job with like color palette. Like Raccoon City is very, I mean, it's almost clinical actually, like how they present Raccoon City in the high school and the lab and Umbrella Corporation versus what we're seeing in 2036.
yeah. And that's a it's a choice. It's nothing that's like it's not like super original. But it works. It like you can tell like this place is weird. And by comparison, Billy and Jade do have a little more like rough edges to them. Yeah, just in the hair choices for Billy, their clothing, than the like white and shades of gray and very light colors that everybody else is wearing
Mhm.
in the town. It's a yeah, but I think that it does the job because then when you go into the 2036, well, Jade is just wearing that like orange suit, but everything around her is like corrupted. Like the land is corrupted, right? Like London, it looks weird. She doesn't seem concerned at all, though. That's kind of interesting too. She has her little encampment, and I really was happy that we got to see how that worked. Not too
Right.
long into the episode, um, and she's just living in her tent. I was almost convinced that when she started that video call that it was like a recording and she was just talking to it like it was real. But then it became clear that that was not the case. I think I was just ready for the show to be darker than it actually was because there isn't a lot of like concern on her part.
No, I mean, she's kind of like, I'm out in the field doing this thing, but she doesn't seem scared. She's just sort of matter of fact, which I kind of liked. And we also see her gearing up to go out and do whatever research she's doing. And we know, I mean, like, I think it's pretty clear that like she's in kind of a burned out London, again, very 28 days later looking, sort of post-apocalyptic apocalyptic London. And but she's sort of like gearing up. She doesn't seem to have fear, like, other than taking normal precautions. She sprays herself with something, which I'm assuming is an anti-zombie or something. And later I think we find out that it doesn't make her smell or something like that. But you know, she's just sort of going about things, and this is normal routine for her. There's nothing like incredibly stressful about what she's doing. And she, you know, even in terms of the research she's doing, to me, she's like incredibly close to whatever she's trying to look at, which turns out to be more, you know, the zeros. But
yeah, the distance from where her experiment happens and where she is observing it is like, I don't know, 20 feet. She's just right there.
Yeah.
So maybe she should be showing a little more concern for her surroundings. But until she sets off her experiment, which is like draw, you know, a prick of blood from this rabbit and put it on some grass and then sit back and watch. Even when that's going on, she's just like, yeah, so, you know, note scientist log, no more. And she explains it later to the guys in Brighton. She's looking for signs of evolution in the virus. But apparently she does not work for Umbrella. So it's kind of, I'm like intrigued from this first episode. What's she actually doing? Who's she with? They're trying to figure out ways to survive in this world, because she also lays out later that there's 300 million humans left alive in the world, 6 billion zombies or zeros. So her goal, as she states, is like trying to figure out a way to maybe kill the zeros faster as the virus evolves. And I thought that was kind of a cool premise. Of course, the scene with her experiment goes sideways. She has to run for her life. We get to see her cool camp function, but then the giant caterpillar shows up, which I thought was a really cool and a different sort of monster.
Yeah, and I liked that. And I liked that it just showed the differences between what was happening with humans, and then later, you know, it's a matter of fact kind of thing that people know that whatever this virus is impacts different species differently, and that's, you know, this is one of those instances. I thought it looked really good, and I mean, they didn't show, like, it was there pretty quickly, but it was scary enough and doing enough damage. And again, it's like a fun kind of like creature thing, and we're used to these things in the Resident Evil franchise, but this was like, I don't know. I enjoyed the fact that they went right into this. And again, to me, they're setting the table pretty well. And all I can say is that to me, it feels like a fun zombie romp so far. And she gets like, I also love that she's got a way to get away from the zeros. She's got this whole plan set up. So she has these like fail-safe things that she does if she gets in trouble. But then there's like, it just sort of escalates into more, you know, oh, she woke up the big monster thing, or it got woken up by this, and now she's in trouble, and then she has to get rescued again, and just in the nick of time. And then we're introduced to this other sort of group of people, and we're finding out a little bit more about how this world works, and everybody is doing something a little bit differently. There's a free, like this group of people, which I guess they're like a surviving enclave or whatever. And you know, they sort of reveal information because she's unconscious, and they're like, oh, she's one of the original survivors. So I like how they're kind of leaving all these clues out about, you know, leading like the backstory, and then sort of like bringing it forward to the present day. And I think it's, you know, to me, it's just really well done. I don't think it feels forced. I think it feels fun.
Yeah, I agree. They also have a little snippet where she like opens up an Umbrella computer at the Freehold, and it shows you maps of the world where all the countries are different now. Like they have different areas with different names. And there's like a bit of a news thing from Umbrella, and I don't know if that was up to date or not, but they were talking about drugs, and that's clearly a huge theme in this show. They're trying to peddle in the past. They're trying to peddle this drug called Joy. And Joy for kids, which is kind of terrifying. And you're like, is this the zombie drug? What are they doing? What's happening? Apparently something happened in Tijuana. and it's just it's an interesting theme. I think that the show starts off for me on a good foot, and I think it'll be really interesting to see how it keeps going. I really liked when Umbrella showed up at the Brighton compound. Mr.
Yeah.
Baxter is a little bit over the top, but the what I really liked was costumes on the Umbrella soldiers. I thought that they looked pretty cool.
And I don't mind Mr. Baxter. I mean, he's playing that to the hilt, a little overdone, agreed, but
When he trips down the stairs, I thought that was good.
yeah, but you're like, oh, he's that kind of guy. That's that's who it is, and he's like doing that sort of snivelly thing that often these kinds of characters do. But and he's the one who's basically like, your sister's looking for you, and that was really well done, because at this point we have only seen, like, we see the origins where the two twins sort of break into the lab. I will say that with a corporation like this, even their plan to break into Umbrella Corporation does seem a little far-fetched, and a little far-fetched that they wouldn't get caught.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that they would have been able to no matter what voice thing they have of their dad or password of their dad they have. I just don't buy that this would have been possible. So you have to suspend disbelief a little bit.
A little. And if Umbrella really had a zombie Doberman in the basement, like that thing wouldn't be under guard.
Right, exactly. And or I don't know, trouble locked up. So I don't know. The whole thing feels that part felt a little ridiculous, and a little convenient, but you got to get there. And of course they've got the Doberman, which is a classic from the franchise. So that was cool. Your little zombie Doberman. And I will say, like, regardless of whether the story or not, it's a big deal that it's bitten Billy. And and I also like that we don't know, like, until the very end, that she's like, because she's playing dead convincingly. Like, this bite was pretty significant. I also like how Jade just like takes out the Doberman, although it does feel like in the past they've been a lot harder to kill than this. So
she does manage to kill it with like 3 hits from a fire extinguisher. Yeah.
Right. So but regardless, like, now and then, this whole thing where they're in big trouble, and there's like sort of this cliffhanger idea, and then we know, I mean, obviously we know Jade has survived, and we now know that her sister has, but who knows what her sister is now.
That was an interesting reveal too in Brighton, where Tate is talking to Jade and he's the Scottish guy, and he says to her, oh, you were a survivor, you were there when the outbreak happened at New Raccoon City, it must have been wild. And he's not saying it like how, you're the cause of all of, our problems. It's more like, whoa, how did you even live through that? And so I think that'll be like, that's just a cool tidbit to be like, hey, that you might see that story too unfolded during the season of this show. And so I kind of enjoyed the way that they did that.
And I also like that it's like clear that they've been looking for Jade, and we got that when, one of the people from the Freehold said, look, you're the number one on their list. And so we have to assume that Billy is working for Umbrella, because it's like, they're looking for Jade. And so they're revealing those kinds of things, which I think is pretty good. And, I just think, I think that this is it's been fun, and again, it's like just a really fun a fun summer thing, a little bit in the way that Black Summer was.
But I mean, very different shows, clearly, like very different approaches. Yep. This is going to be like, I don't know, this is going to be fantastic Cole versus gritty, and I think as long as you know that, when you should, because it's Resident Evil and it's never been about realism. It's been about laser walls and all kinds of weird stuff.
Yeah. And it's going to be, it's video gamey. And so that's it. But, I also think that, but I do think that the story is so far really interesting. And so I'm cool with this as it is. And I don't know, we'll have to see, where we go with the next one. I would imagine, based on the ending of this, that almost every episode is going to be a little cliffhanger until we get to the end, but that's all right, and that's sort of in line with the whole franchise. So So in any case, I'm looking forward to watching the next episodes. And I definitely recommend it. I think this is just fun. Get some popcorn and enjoy the ride.
Absolutely. I think that's where we're at. So come back next time, I guess, and hear some more of us talking about the show, Resident Evil on Netflix. The next episode, this first one and the last one are an hour. The intermediate ones, I think, are all in the 40-minute zone, which is a little more manageable. Otherwise, shows are so long these days. But the next episode is called The Devil You Know, and then there's The Light. I don't know how many we're going to do in a row. We'll talk about it, but we'll be back to do more of this next time.
Yes, and if you have any thoughts about it, feel free to leave us a note on the website, reanimatedpodcast.com. Send us an email, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet at us. Reanimatedpcast is the handle. And until next time, thanks for listening, and ciao.
All righty. Bye now.